waiting. Here we go. We should have some audio fading in that no one can hear but us. Kevin can't hear it, so no. There we go. We'll see. Hopefully, people will let us know if they can hear us. Please do so, because we're live again, and it looks like I'm getting sound bites, which is good. It says we're on, and I should go through and edit all these out because it's the worst part of the live thing, and everyone has to do it. They're like, "Is it on? Is the red light on?" You know,
yeah,
but we can't help it. Oh, nothing from Sean Malloy. So okay, hold on. Maybe. How about now? Oh, Todd can hear. I don't know. Someone can hear us. Sean, is your volume? This is the most embarrassing part.
Right.
It's terribly embarrassing.
Just initially getting it dialed.
I know. Okay. People can hear us. I'm just going to leave whatever was on before on, and Zach can hear us. August can hear us. We're in. All right. I'm going to fade, and we'll go tie some flies and stuff. So, awesome. Marco, thanks for hosting with me tonight.
Yeah, so happy to be here tonight. First one, first of many, hopefully, and yeah, excited to see Kevin tie up some flies. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be. This is the last one of the season for us, which is kind of sad. But you know, we got some things coming up. We got the Midwest Fly Fishing Show this weekend.
Yep.
We had the fly fishing film tour last weekend. Thank you everyone that came out. What a great crowd! I know I had a blast.
So much fun.
Great films, great people. It's a fun opportunity for us to see all of you, and you know, I think everybody gets a little fired up. So we've seen some more traffic in the shop, and
yep,
the sale we're having might help with that. That's kind of a shameless plug, isn't it? Yeah, but we're having a Cabin Fever sale. Check it out. It's online or in the store, and we'll run it through this coming weekend so that you can get some cool stuff. We got fly lines, we got rods, we got gear, we got all sorts of stuff. So, yeah, this is I guess we should probably introduce our guest tonight.
Yeah.
So this is Kevin Feenstra, everyone. So obviously, if you're tuning in, you've probably heard of Kevin. Kevin, thanks for driving up from. Where are you driving from? Newaygo, yeah. So how far is that drive?
It's about 2 hours.
2 hours, that's not bad. So, and then you're on the event like tour.
Kinda,
yeah. Yeah.
Winters are always pretty busy, but this winter's been quite busy, so yeah.
Yeah, we might blame the new book on that, huh? Is that so?
I love that. That's very subtle. Yeah.
That's the good lead-in, right? Yep. So Kevin has a new book, everyone.
Yep. It's Matching Warm Water Bait Fish, and it's available now. It just came out about a week ago, and they have some here. So if you want to come here and get one, that would be great. The book is 230 pages long. It is 330 images in it, so it's got a lot of photography. And if you have kind of a fish nerd side to you where you like to read about different types of fish and minnows and things like that, I feel it's a really good fish nerd type of a book, as well as a good fishing book. So, so check it out, and I would love to thank you guys.
All right, real quick. It's odd. We've got people that can hear us and people that cannot. So give me 1 second. I'm going to play the music or whatnot, and then hopefully I can solve this real quick if I even remember how to play the music. So hold on 1 second. Okay, Kevin's not loud enough. Kevin's mic is off. I can hear him.
Yeah, I can hear him too, loud and clear.
Hold on. Hold, please. All right. This is embarrassing. Jeez. MacBook I don't.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you good.
Okay, let's odd. Hold on, sorry. Levels.
Good.
I don't think it needs phantom power.
Ooh, that sounds fancy.
Yeah, well, if Brian was here, he'd be completely freaking out. He'd probably be in the back just like having a meltdown. So, okay. I think we're making progress. Oh, you know what? Let me check Kevin's microphone because there's a. Hope I didn't turn it on. There should be a green light. All right, this is. Sorry, guys. That's 100% on me.
That one?
That's a green. I guess it's probably not close enough, but that's okay. Yours is good. That's just for me later. So.
Okay.
Well, let's find out. I'll just crank that sucker. Any comments coming through? All right.
See, we hear you now.
We hear you now.
All right. I'm just going to crank Kevin all the way up.
211.
Yeah.
Booming.
Yeah,
voice.
yeah.
One thing
All right.
I've never been accused of.
Can everyone hear Kevin? We're going to have a conversation with Kevin, and you can tell us if you can hear Kevin now. So, all right. So the book
Yes.
is full of images, which
It
is
is.
great. How many are yours?
Probably about, there's 330 images, 326 of those in mine, so all but 4.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot of snorkeling and fishing in order to create the book, and I had a lot of help from some really good fly tyers that contributed. Ed McCoy and Russ Madden, some of the people from the other side of the state, Mike Schultz, and just a variety of different really good tyers contributed to the book. So I did a dozen patterns on my own that were step by step with photos. So that's kind of different from the previous book, and just a lot of different stuff that I think people will find interesting that you might not find in some of the other books. That just kind of has a kind of a science piece to it. I mean, it's just learning about different fish that you might not normally hear about. So
Still working out some mic stuff here.
All right. We're just going to get real in the frame now.
okay, do I need to?
Oh, you're good. You're good.
Okay.
We'll find out. I think it was probably maybe too far away. It's odd because the levels look fine, but apparently not. All right. Well, we'll find out.
Give this one a try.
Yeah.
All right.
Testing. All right. His levels are all the way up. I don't know.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, they're probably not at all. Okay. Okay, let's try this again. We're gonna talk to Kevin again because no one can hear him apparently. Oh, you know what? I wonder which one did I plug it into? No, you're good. That's fine. It's on 4. All right. Sorry, everyone. Can't win.
Technology
I
is
know.
our friend.
Yeah. All right, we're just going to keep rolling. What's weird is I can't hear myself now.
Oh.
Which is really odd. I can sort of hear myself, but I feel like I don't know. It's an audio nightmare. No worries. Okay. Can everyone hear us now? Because I can barely hear myself, which is odd. So I don't know what.
Yeah, that's going to put some extra flair in it.
Yeah, it's a whole thing, which is odd because I don't know. Hopefully people can hear Kevin now. So, all right. How about now? All right. Have you been fishing much?
I have been fishing quite a bit. Winter is time of the year that I fish myself, so running just enough trips to pay the bills, and peddling books and fishing whenever I can. So it's a great time of the year, and we have more fish around this year, like most of the other rivers. I mean, we have good steelhead, and a lot of them are definitely winter fish, but and we've had some really good brown trout fishing. So it's been just a nice winter. I can do different things each day and fish different areas and catch different fish. So.
All right, I'm gonna try something because people are still complaining. Sorry, Marco, I'm in your space.
No, you're good.
Let's see. All right, there's phantom power there. That's fine. Condenser mic, level. All right.
Haley, grab me that LaCroix. Thank you, Cliff.
All right, what are we tying tonight? I'll just see if that comes through.
What are we tying tonight?
Yeah, let's see what we're.
I'm gonna tie. Each winter it seems like because I'm fishing a lot on my own, I find different flies that work from year to year that are sometimes a little bit different, sometimes a lot different than the previous year. And so this year, I've been using a couple sculpin patterns that I just have great confidence in just about every day since mid-December. So and they've kind of changed from day to day, but I'll tie those in my current iteration, and I might tie a couple smallmouth flies depending on our timing today. So there's a lot to cover here, and it's should be a good time, I hope. So everything
We'll
working?
find out. It sounds. Everyone says you sound like you're underwater. So.
Oh, really? Well,
Yeah. So I don't know. We might have to get.
it's better than underground, I suppose. But.
All right. I think when that happens, maybe we switch chords. You know, that's a viable thing, right? Hold, please.
Please stand by.
I had to leave the backup microphone at home, didn't I? I just had to. This is not going to be long enough.
Just let me know what you need me to help out with.
You're good, you're good. All right, let's see. Clicks in. Yeah, we'll try Kevin's mic from there. What screen are we on?
You're on, Kevin.
Okay. All right, give that a whirl.
Give that a whirl.
It's still really quiet.
Let's see.
I don't know. I don't know what the deal is. We're like way up on volume too.
Change one from your guys' table.
No, it doesn't work that way. Those don't work for that. All right, Kevin, give it a test.
Hello? Testing 1,
No,
2,
it needs
3.
phantom power.
Phantom power. That sounds so cool.
Weird. Well, we might be. Oh, I love it. Love it, love it, love it. All right. Unhook that. That's weird. I don't know. I don't know. Well, gosh. Let's, I'm trying to come up with an alternative.
Do we need
idea.
to pull this microphone out?
Oh, jeez. I need a spigot. Two-way spigot. That.
Well, you guys keep talking. And then
All right.
Yeah. So, Kevin, have you seen a lot more interest this year in the number of spay fishermen?
I would say for us it probably peaked maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and there's still a good number and a lot of people interested.
Yeah.
But it definitely peaks and valleys. If we have a lot of fish around, then I see a lot of people two-handed fishing. But a lot of times, if we don't have a lot of fish, then they might be doing other things. So yeah,
Right.
this year we had a good number of fish. So
Yeah, there was a bunch to play around with, and it was cool to see it. Coming back to this shop in August, early fall, and just seeing all the interest
right.
in that sport, and it seems like there was more interest than when I left 5 years ago. To move out to Montana and all that, and so it's a great welcome home for it.
Yeah, and I think what you see too is that each year it seems like different rivers are popular with kind of the people that are fishing day to day. So
Right.
I mean, if the Pure Marquette becomes a place to go, then the Muskegon's pretty quiet, and if it's the Manistee, they go there. This year it's been, even though we had a good number of fish, it was a pretty quiet year, traffic wise. But the thing of it is with the Muskegon is that a lot of the boats are motorized, and on a year like this year where we had virtually no water, it can be pretty tough on boats. And so I think a lot of people probably went to the wading rivers instead that they could wade easily,
Right.
like the Pure Marquette or maybe the Rogue or White, stuff like that. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Did you see many Lake Run Browns coming up this year? Was it?
there were some, probably more than last year.
Yeah.
They came in, they spawn really at strange intervals compared to other fish, and so a lot of times the best bite is after they've spawned, because a lot of times will stay in the river for the while and feed. So
Yep.
they didn't spawn until, a lot of them not until December this year
Okay.
by us. And
Wow.
so a lot of the ones we picked up were getting close to Christmas time.
Wow.
Yeah.
And those the Lakefront Browns are all natural, right? Or do they plant those?
It's kind of hard to say. They used to stock a lot in the river mouths. They don't do that anymore very much, but they do stock the Muskegon very heavily with stream fit.
Yep.
Stream
Stream
fish,
brown,
and
yeah.
there's no reason those fish can't go out to the lake. So,
Right.
it is true though. We probably do get some wild fish that come out of some of the tributaries.
Yeah.
That just go to the lake that are by nature.
Will you turn 3 and 4 down?
3 and 4
All
down.
the way down. For a second. You
Yep. It's all the way down.
good? Sorry, Kev.
No
Screwing
problem.
this up.
This is an adventure.
It's
It's like I run out of my boat out of gas.
impossible to do sound check, I guess. I thought we had a good sound check. But apparently not. I would love to. I know people are suggesting we use Marco's mic, but there are different types of microphones. And that doesn't work real well to use a dynamic condenser versus a supercardioid, everyone. So I'd love to, but it doesn't quite work that way. I wish. Dropping. See how many people we keep for this. All right, good. Wrap.
Yeah, do I need to do some stand up?
No.
Yeah, man, I'll applaud.
You know why mermaids, what kind of soap mermaids use?
No, what
I
kind of
don't.
soap?
They use Tide.
Oh. Yeah.
This
This is number.
You know why the
This is number 3.
toilet paper rolled down the hill?
I don't.
Well, it had to get to the bottom.
Wait, that's so
Are
odd.
you sure these aren't your kids' jokes now, Kevin?
They are.
Why are we
Yeah,
getting?
My wife doesn't think they're funny, but my kids do.
Yeah.
Get a lot of eye rolls though, so you can't really tell.
The level doesn't
Great
do
dad
anything.
jokes.
I don't understand
Great
what's
dad.
going on. This is so odd. Anything from people? They saying anything?
Just uses Lance's idea to use Marco's mic.
Well, it's a different type of mic. I can't just
Right.
stick one up there. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately.
Right.
All right, maybe I'll put one up there and see what happens. Who knows?
Or trade seats.
Hmm?
Trade seats with Marco. Can you tie there real quick? Got enough light?
There's no. All right, that would take an hour to reset up. Nope. We're gonna keep doing this insanity because we have no other way to do it. So.
I believe in you.
There you go. I like positive attitude.
We're hooking up some new mics right now to see if this works, guys.
Hit 3 if you're talking to them.
Hello?
Let's see.
Got like 2 extra mics. Sorry about your drink. It's gonna.
No
it's
problem.
Gonna, all right, that should be number 4. And we can just have like surround sound, I guess. All right, Kevin, what you got?
Hello? Hello?
Does this sound better, guys?
Did we lose this camera?
Hmm.
You can hear him
Why
even though
did the
Mike is
raccoon
out.
cross the road? Or why did the chicken cross the road?
I don't know. Why?
To prove to the raccoon it could be done.
Yeah. Kids' jokes for days. I love it.
I'm trying, guys. Gotta be an entertainer.
Mm-hmm.
All right, weird. I don't know. We're gonna try this, and we're gonna have like a bunch of different microphones on Kevin, and just go for it. So he's got 2 different mics. I don't know what's happening. Onward. I can't hear myself anymore. I don't know what's going on. I think our board's dying. Maybe it happens. All right.
Here, do you want this?
Thank you, everyone who has been sticking it out. I can't believe we've actually gained people while we're doing this. That doesn't make any sense. Hopefully you can all hear me. I can't even hear myself now. We'll see if we can hear Kevin. I don't know what's going on, and we'll keep rolling.
Yeah,
All right. What are we
roll
tying
with it.
first, Kevin?
The first thing I'm going to tie, is a sculpin pattern. I was kind of saying earlier, I don't know if everybody heard, but from year to year, depending on what the water's like, I always try to find different patterns to use at different times of the year, or from year to year, just so that I'm not always using the same flies, even though some of them work pretty good year to year. So the first fly I'm going to tie is going to be I call it a grape and green sculpin. Sculpins are kind of like the underwater chameleon. They take on the color of the river. And so in the winter months, what it comes down to where I fish is that we have a lot of moss during the winter months. And so the sculpins take on kind of a mossy color. And that's the same is true of even things like the gobies that we have. They take on kind of a greenish color. So I'm going to start tying a little bit, and if nothing else, maybe you guys can kind of follow along with the tying, and we'll get sound back sooner or later, and we'll go from there, okay?
Awesome. Let's see it, Kevin.
All right, I've got a few flies to tie, so even if you can't hear some of them, you'll hear the rest. So many of you guys know, everybody, there's a lot of different ways to attach a hook. The way I'm going to do it, and you've probably seen me do it before if you've watched me tie before, is that a lot of times I'll put the hook on a trailer. And the way that I do that is I take a piece of Power Pro, which is a braided fishing line, fold it down, and I turn it over, and I tie a knot. And that gives me a good base for the fly that I'm going to tie on, okay? Or the hook that I'm going to tie on, and I'll show you that a little bit later. We're just going to set that aside. It's going to be an important part of our fly when it comes up. This winter we had such low water that I used a lot of really lightweight flies. Not that they weren't big flies, it's just that they didn't sink very fast. And so, one of the things I did was I like using flies that have eyes on them. But because the water was so low, I wasn't using things like brass. I was just using plated gold-colored eyes like this. And it's just plastic. It doesn't sink very much. And so I would add those to the pattern. So I'm going to show you how to tie this fly, and we're going to go through it. And if anybody has any questions, well, I guess you can ask as we go through. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take some pretty heavy thread here, and this will be a pretty good sized fly. It'll probably be about 4 inches long when all is said and done. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to cover this shank with thread. This is just a shank, and a shank is, in this case, this one is made by a company called Aquaflies, but it's basically just, it's like a hook that doesn't have any hook on it. And this is a really good way to catch steelhead because it allows us to trail a hook that's a lot smaller and a lot wider than your typical big long hook. And steelhead will have a lot harder time prying this little short wide hook out of their mouth once they're hooked than they would with this longer hook. Their steelhead are really good at prying long hooks out, and so if you go anything longer than 3x, say, you're going to have a lot of fish that are going to be able to pry themselves free of the hook. So we're going to eventually tie one of these trailing hooks on. For this big of a fly, I'm going to use one with a little bit bigger eye, which is going to look like this. Okay, and so this hook is going to trail behind the fly once we get all said and done. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to keep covering this hook with thread, or this shank with thread. I'm going to bring the thread on up to the front, like so. And I'm just going to bind everything down tightly. At this point, I'm going to take these plastic eyes. Now, because they're plastic, it doesn't matter whether you tie them above the hook or below because they don't have any weight, so they can't flip the fly over. So I'm just going to tie these on the top of the shank, like so. And I'm going to do it very tightly. And what that's going to do is it's going to give us two eyes that are on the shank. A lot of times at home, if I have some thin super glue, I'll put some on at this point. It kind of depends on what my plans are with the fly. If it's something I'm giving to somebody else, I'll be a lot more careful about the longevity of the fly than I would if I'm trying to get some sleep before a guide trip and getting it done. So anyways, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that piece of Power Pro that we tied the knot in earlier. There's a few different ways you can do this. If you want it to be ultra secure, you can actually thread it through the bottom of the eye of the shank. Another way that's very secure is to just, if you have any type of eyes on the fly, just to tie it in above the eyes and just fold that under the eyes, and that'll give the fly some really good security. The colors that works really good on this pattern, the sculpins have kind of reddish fins, but I actually like to use something that's more towards a purplish color because in the winter the color of the light coming through is very cool. It's very bluish, and so I prefer to use things that are more towards the bluer part of the spectrum. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take one of these hen hackles. Looks like this. It's a grizzly hen that's dyed kind of a lavender color. I'm not sure what they technically call it, but all I'm going to do, I'm going to take one of these and I'm going to tie it on just at the very back of the hook, and it's going to go right over top of the it's going to go right over top of that loop that I tied on there, and I'm just going to snip it off. Now the next step I'm going to do is I'm just going to move the thread a little bit forward, like so, and I'm going to tie this rabbit strip on. Ideally you'll have a fairly long rabbit strip, and I'll explain to you why in just a little bit here, but I'm going to tie that on over top, just like so. Now, a lot of times, the reason I'm doing it this way is because in the winter time when I go out and fish, a lot of times I'll spend time swinging the fly, which is its primary purpose, but I also want to be able to convert this fly into a fly that I can strip if I want to catch trout, because the brown trout really like to eat sculpins, and if there's no steelhead bite, or if I just want to catch trout, I can dual purpose this fly and still catch some nice fish with it, hopefully. So it's always good to have flies in your box that you can use for a couple different species. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this kind of lavender colored grizzly hackle, and I'm going to take a little bit bigger feather, and I'm just going to tie it in just a little bit further over the hook. And if you notice, both of these feathers are are going down over and they curve down over the rabbit strip or below the rabbit strip, but they're both curving down as far as the fly tying goes. And the advantage to this is that if I decide to strip the fly, it'll give the fly a little bit of a wobble, and that's a very helpful thing. And so now I have this grape and green, and if you really want it to wobble more, you can always add more of these types of feathers, which will stiffen up the fly. But I want this one to have quite a bit of action to it as well. So in the winter, one of the things I really like to do is to give the fly some bluish color. And this is a material that I use a lot. It's called Ripple Ice Fiber. I go buy probably pounds of this every winter. And because of the way the color of the light bouncing off the snow is, everything has a little bit of a bluish tint to your eye. And I really believe in that during the winter months. It's the same deal like if you're fishing in the summer and you find that gold and yellow works really well. To me, that's because the days are really long, and that golden light, the fish get used to seeing that golden light off the side of a fish. So it's the same idea in the winter. We're just using the bluer light, that the days are short and this light is bouncing off the snow, and so everything looks a little bit more blue. So I'm just going to tie this in like so. It's not going to be anything fancy. And then I'm just going to add a couple colors to it. I use a little bit of this, they call it Merlot colored Flashaboo. It's very fancy sounding. And it's just kind of a darkish red, kind of almost a maroonish color. And I'm going to add just a little bit of that to this. And I'm just going to fold it back. And now I've just got a little bit. This fly has some kind of weird colors, but I know the fish are eating it as a natural because of the number of trout that I catch. The wintertime trout are pretty picky about eating things that are actually food, and so this definitely resembles something close to food. And now I'm going to use a little material that it's called Crystal Web, and I think it's made by a company called Fly Tyers Dungeon, but it's basically a crystal color, and this one is considered to be tan, but it's actually more of an olive to the naked eye. And so I'm going to take a little bit of that, and I'm going to put that over top, and right now our fly is in pretty good shape. Okay, and we don't have a lot that I'm going to do to this yet, but I am going to do a few more steps. I'm going to take some kind of fur. It could be a dark fox fur. I happen to have some dyed Australian possum, which might be a little harder to come by, but really any tan or brown kind of bulky fur will work for this. You could even probably use something like muskrat for this. But all I'm going to do is I'm going to tie this in a little bit behind the eyes like that. And at this point, I'm going to take either an olive colored feather, marabou feather. It could be regular marabou, or if you have small marabou like this, I'm going to take a couple of these, and I'm just going to tie them in, splaying one out to each side. So one's going to lay out to the left, like so, and it's going to kick out to the side, and the other one's going to lay out to the right. And we're doing pretty good right now, okay? Now bear in mind that the bigger you make the head of this fly, the harder it is going to be to sink. So if you're fishing in faster water or deeper water and you need to get the fly down, you might want to use eyes that have a little bit of weight, or just make the fly more narrow and less bulky. But your trade-off is that sculpins have a bulky head, so if it doesn't have a bulky head, the fish might not respond very well. So I have some bluish green dubbing here, and it's very much the color of the moss that we have in the river at this time of year. Sculpins are considered to be the chameleons of the river, and they take on the color of the river bottom. And so I'm going to use that mossy colored dubbing, and I'm just going to tie this in behind the eyes, and I'm just going to fold it back like so. Okay, and you can leave as much material as you want, but I'm going to trim it down and fold it down. And so the net result is this kind of nifty looking fly that looks like this. And that's pretty much the finished product. We really just have one more step to the fly. Usually, well, a couple more steps depending on how you want to do it, but we took enough time building this fly that I feel like it's good to put a little glue on it. So I'm going to use a little bit of UV glue. It's a new bottle, so it's a pretty big bunch. But and now I'm just going to take some UV light and I'm going to put it on the front, and this will just solidify the head. Many of you are familiar, if you tie big flies, of doing that. Now, typically, if I'm fishing this fly, I would mount a hook at the back. Usually I'd use a tube fly hook for the Muskegon if it's got any water in it at all, you know. And I just would thread that on there loop to loop, and the fly would be good to go. Now, if I decided I wanted to fish that for trout, the trout don't really like that hook trailing down like that as much as the steelhead are pretty much ambivalent to it, but the trout are not. So what I would do is I would just pierce the tail of the fly with that hook, and then the fly wouldn't sag in the water as much. And so you'd have this good fly that wobbles in the river and is kind of multi-purpose, and that I can fish for trout or steelhead in the winter with it and hopefully be successful. So there it goes.
Wow, super cool pattern, Kevin. I really like how the idea of putting the rabbit strip in between the two pieces of hackle. I'm sure you get a ton of movement out of that when it's in the water.
Yep.
Is there a certain type of light condition that you would fish those type of flash colors on the Muskegon?
Those are definitely low light or dark light. You know, the days are so short in the winter, and I'm sure up here you're just like we were. There was a long period where we didn't have any sunshine.
Yep, same thing.
So, it could be depressing if the fish weren't biting.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's the first of the two flies I'm going to tie, and I can move on to the next.
If everybody will hold 1 second, I'm going to try something, see if I can get our mics connected again. I think there's a connection issue. So 3, 2, 1, go. Hang on. What in the world? Mic. Hey, Roadcaster Pro Series. Okay. I think I may have fixed it. I can't hear myself. But
It's resolved.
Let's see if we can hear Kevin.
Hello. Hi.
Thoughts? Anyone? Would love to hear your feedback. Because there's 2 loud mics on Kevin. I think it's connected.
Testing.
We did have a quick question about what shank length that was, Kevin.
So I typically use about a 40 millimeter shank, 35 to 40 millimeter. If you want the sculpin to be really long, you can. But the further the distance you put between the shank and the hook, the greater the chance that a fish is going to bite some part of the shank that the fish can't get hooked. So once you get past 3 or 4 inches, then you might want to go with, sometimes you can use a hook at the front and a hook at the rear if you're tying a really big version. Swung flies, it's usually good to have the hook at the rear. If you're stripping a fly, it could go either way, but a lot of times you'd want the hook at the front. So anyways, it kind of varies on your situation. So.
Awesome. What type of Power Pro did you use, or what strength?
I've been using 65 and 80. Mm-hmm. If I'm only planning on using a big hook, then I use 80 or 100.
Yep.
Because it's stiffer, and the stiffer it is, the less chance of any fouling happening. Once I pierce that rabbit strip like I did, it's probably not going to foul very much anyways. And one trick that you can do if you find that you want to use Power Pro, but it sometimes gets tangled, is that after you put the hook on, you can, if you're putting the hook on at your bench, you can take your UV glue and just put a little bit on the braid, and that'll stiffen it up and will keep it from fouling as well. So I'm deeply suspicious of fouling. If I have a client that misses a fish, the first thing I look as a fly goes by my ear is whether it's fouled or not. So.
That's hilarious.
That is so funny.
All right. So are we solved?
Yeah, everyone can hear you. Shockingly.
All right. Well, that's,
I still can't hear myself, but that's not important. We want people to hear Kevin. So
okay.
and then we'll probably have you talk about your book again, just to
Ooh.
really, once we're maybe at the end. And
Yeah.
so anyone that missed it and has tuned in, we had some audio issues, and Kevin regaled us with this amazing description of his book with beautiful photography. And then we realized our soundboard was not actually connected to the computer due to a cord issue. It's always something because
Right.
we heard it fine, but they didn't. So
Right.
it's all about you all. Thank you for sticking around, everyone.
Thank
And
you.
rock and roll.
Yeah,
So my first book display was kind of subliminal. I was kind of moving it around in front of the camera.
Right.
All right, so I'm going to tie another pattern for you guys. And I'm going to use a smaller shank. So I love this fly that we just did, but I found something that worked every day, it seemed like. I mean, this little next fly worked remarkably well. It's nothing fancy, definitely a guide fly, but it is a little bit different, and I'm going to just show you. Because our water was so low, I parsed down everything. I used some really small spay type flies. I used some just some really small leech patterns, and then also the places that I like to use a sculpin, because the sculpin has a real advantage in that the fish can feel it, and if you're fishing in low light in the morning or the evening, the sculpin really has a good feel for the fish and a big profile. So this is kind of my parsed down sculpin. I'll show you how I do it. This one I'll put a little bit more weight on it because the water's up right now, and I know I'll use this fly in the next few days if I have the chance. So
you're not going to leave that for us?
I'll leave the big one.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to keep the eye of this one riding up. So I'm going to just lash these bead chain eyes, which are kind of probably about 5 millimeters or 4 millimeters. And I'm going to lash them on the hook just like so. Okay. Nothing here is going to be unusual. It's going to be very similar at first to the first fly. And while we were chatting, I made up another one of my little loops with a knot on the bottom of it. And I'm just going to take that and I'll put it back here like so. And this one's probably a little longer than I need it to be, but I can use that actually to strengthen the fly by going back and forth, kind of crisscross with that material. And there's nothing worse than if you're guiding somebody and if you use a braid like this, a fish can actually, if you're not careful, if you don't put some way for that to anchor on there, the fish can actually you ever see the people that pull the tablecloth off the table and everything's still standing? You can get it where your fly still looks completely intact, but there's no hook and no way to attach a hook anymore if you don't do that. So that's why I put this little overhand knot. That's a stopper. You can also at this point put some Zap-A-Gap or some kind of glue there. But one thing that I'm going to do that's different is I'm going to take a rabbit strip. This is just a normal rabbit strip. It's considered to be dark olive. Okay. This is dark olive. And what I'm going to do, even though this is a normal rabbit strip, even the thinner rabbit strips aren't quite thin enough. So we're going to be really careful. And I'm just going to cut this super, super thin. Okay. And that's going to keep this fly really, really sparse. Okay. And ideally, because of the way a sculpin is built, his tail is a little bit bigger, but his body actually gets narrower and narrower to the end. So we're going to get rid of any excess material. We really just want the tail of that fly like this. Okay. And I'm going to take this like so. I've just lashed it in. This is dark olive. Dark olive is definitely one of my favorite winter colors. And even through the spring, if I'm going to swing flies in the spring and we have any amount of water in the river, if I'm not using a salmon fry, I'd be using a sculpin like this. So I'm going to give it just a little bit of that blue again. This is that ripple ice fiber, okay? Now we're not going to give this fly nearly as many materials as the previous one. I'm going to take one grizzly olive feather, maybe two. Okay, one or two of these.
Is that just a deceiver patch there or something
Yeah,
like
this
that?
is I think this is a hen patch.
Hen?
Yeah.
Okay.
But either would work. This one just happens, you buy these and some of them are really thick that are wide that I use on bigger patterns, and some of them are narrow that I use on these little bit smaller patterns. And so I'm just going to lay this over the back like so. And I'm going to give it a snip. And again, the two colors I'm going to use on this are, I'm going to use this, which is considered a chocolate colored flash that I use, but it's basically a reddish color.
Is that chocolate colored or chocolate covered? What was that? Oh, it was...
Chocolate colored, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. And I'm just going to lay this on top, okay, like so. This stuff is like magic. For steelhead, I really love this color. It's not a Flashaboo product. This one is Fly Tires Dungeon, but it's a really good color. Alternately, you could use that Merlot color that I showed you earlier, or you could use the cranberry holographic. But I just find that this chocolate is just the right thing. Now, the other thing that's kind of a magical color is avocado, and I think Flashaboo calls this a special edition color or something, but I hope that they keep it around because it's really, really good. And so I have this avocado colored Flashaboo, and I'm just going to tie a few strands of that over top, like so. Now, give it a snip. So these are the two colored flashes I have. Now, a few years ago, somebody gave me some McFly foam that was olive, and I thought, well, that'll make great sculpin heads or something. And I thought, well, I tried it and I really didn't do very good with it. But what I do like about it is how it pushes the water, and the fish really seem to respond to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lash a little bit of this. This is an olive color. And I'm actually going to just fold it and make kind of a hair bun out of it, like so. And I'm going to cut it off. Okay, so it's got like a brain. Okay, and now
I remember that tying eggs like that. What was it wasn't, it was like the crystal meth egg or whatever
Right.
with that, where you just kind of
Yep.
looped it and
makes really good sucker egg patterns. But unfortunately, I find that with this fly, if I just left it like this, the steelhead you get the odd steelhead, but basically I'm going to tuck that material underneath a different one. So I'm just going to use an olive dubbing, a real leggy dubbing. There's a few different brands of things similar to this. But I'm just going to cover that on up, and I'm going to lash it down. And there is my brainy sculpin. And that's all there is to it. And at that point, you just finish it off. It's a really simple pattern. It works really good at this time of the year and through the spring. And there she is.
Nice. I love that dubbing head too with the rubber legs in there.
Yep.
Super fishy.
Super fishy, and it's quite a quick tie. It's definitely not a real elaborate tie, but it day to day it's a very deadly fly. And I find myself getting really lazy this winter and just tying one of these on at the beginning of the day when I fish myself and using it the whole day, because fishing is so much confidence oriented, and I just have a lot of confidence in catching a fish with this every day. And it catches, although I keep the fly rigged as a swung fly, I catch a lot of brown trout swinging this fly, and it's of course a good steelhead fly. So there's that. Just like that.
Awesome. Little snack size swing
Snack
fly.
size, yeah. And I generally, with this fly, rather than putting that big heavy hook on the back of it, because especially with our water being low, a lot of times I'll use these smaller hooks. This is a size 4 octopus hook that I'm wrestling with. It's trying to embarrass me. There we go.
You
And
got
so-
nothing to worry about after my audio issues. So
And so there's our completed fly. Okay. Very simple. There's a couple.
I think that's a really good spot for a question we actually had from a customer of ours, Steve, that came in, and he's new to swinging flies. He took a tying class with Marco, and his question was, is there a preference for inverted hook versus standard with swung flies?
That's a good question. The inverted hook has two advantages. The one advantage is that although it's very rare, you will sometimes have a fish steelhead take a fly very deep, and if the hook is going down, you might kill a fish a year or so. It's not going to kill very many, but it might do it. The other advantage to running the hook upright is that if you're fishing somewhere that has a lot of debris and snags, you are going to get fewer snags by running that hook upright. So those are really the two main advantages to it. It's kind of weird. Some years I don't have any fish that take a fly deeply, and then other years you have a few. And it's I'm all catch and release. But if a fish is wounded mortally, then you would keep the fish. But
yeah, you have no guarantee that your fly is swimming upright. I know some people will say
Right.
it will.
It might go off to one side or the other.
It's tough to say.
Yeah, and it depends too, especially when I'm using braid like this, because braid is softer, so the hook might lean to one side or the other. Whereas if you used wire, which also has its own pluses and minuses, wire would probably run a little more true, but with less action. So
Sure.
yeah,
I think that's a good. Yeah. Good with that, Marco.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
No, that was all great.
Yeah.
okay.
That's great.
All right,
we're
I'll move on
cruising.
to another fly, guys. Give me just a second here. I've got a couple more tricks up my sleeve. Actually, I could go for quite a while, but we're not gonna. All right, so I'm gonna tie something that we have a lot of in the spring, and it works for trout. It works for smallmouth bass. I'm gonna tie something that has a lot of colorful materials, but yet it's a natural pattern, and that pattern, it's going to be a little rainbow darter. So that's what we're going to tie next, and I'm going to unload a whole bunch of really colorful materials out here, and I'm going to just show you guys how to tie this little fly here. It's my kind of fly, though. It's got a lot of razzle dazzle. I'm going to use a big wet fly hook for this, which is basically just a down-eyed, relatively short-shanked hook, probably 2x long. This one's called a Van Klinken bomber hook. I use it a lot for swung flies, but it's just a nice wet fly hook. Okay. And I'm just going to go through this pattern. This is a really good one to have in the Midwest River, because just about every river, the little minnow that nobody thinks of is one of the most colorful, called a rainbow darter. And when they spawn in the spring, as they do in just about every trout stream in Michigan, they are very vulnerable to other fish preying on them. And so it's just a good fly to have in your box at any time. So I'm just going to tie you guys one of these. This is a fly that you could swing and twitch, but it also works really good as a stripped fly. Sometimes I'll run a really flashy kind of coppery fly in front of it, and then I'll run this back behind it as kind of a more natural pattern, and it works really, really good. So I'm just gonna tie this little guy. I'm gonna just cover the hook with thread, just like you would with any fly that you might tie. If you're new to tying, this is probably the most important step you can do. You should really cover the hook with thread, and leave. With this fly, I'm going to bring the thread back about a quarter of the way, and at this point, I'm going to tie on a nice set of eyes. Nice set of eyes.
Lost a bead.
Lost the bead. Please stand by. All right, we're going to tie a nice set of eyes on down here. And these are just bead chain eyes. And these are going to be little orange eyes. I'm just going to tie them on underneath the hook. This is more of an attractor color of eyes. Most minnows have either kind of a goldish color eye, or they have big black pupils, you know, so you could, if you wanted to be super natural about things, you could tie the fly with either black eyes or with gold eyes. Those are probably the closest match to things in nature. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring the thread back now, okay, and I'm going to tie in a nice piece. This is called Magnum Copper Flashabou, and this is another material that I go through pounds of every year. And I'm just going to tie it in as a tail, and I'm going to give it a little snip. And so now all we have is we have a set of eyes that are about a quarter of the way back the hook. Then we have this copper Flashabou that's saltwater size. And now I'm just going to take a couple things here. One of the first things I'm going to take is I'm going to take a nice orange feather here. And this is an orange hen feather. You could use a rooster feather. And we're going to look for one that's pretty narrow. And I'm going to just take one of these, and I'm just going to tie it out the back of the hook like so. Okay? Just like that. Now, if you look at these particular minnows in the water, they have kind of a yellowish orange tail sometimes. So I'm going to throw in a little bit of amber. This is, I think this is called amber senyo laser fiber or something to that end. And I'm just going to tie that in right here, like so. Okay, so we have these two different fibers. The feather is going to really give the fly some form, and then this is just going to go around it and give it kind of a glow in the water, which is really nice. So
that is, if for anybody looking for clarification, that is the Senyo laser dub. It's like the long one, though. You're looking for, there's usually a 5.
I used to call it a 4.0
or a 4.0. That's what it is. I knew there was a number at the end.
It's a good product if you.
It's hard to find.
It is.
Look how long it is. I mean, hold that thing up.
Okay,
hold that up, Kevin. Look how long that is.
It's retro like me. I tell my wife I'm retro.
We're gonna wear that at the show.
Okay.
You know?
All right, I'll wear some cape made out of Australian possums or something.
Careful, you might be a hot commodity there.
Yeah,
I hear they're tougher to get now.
Well, you know, I have connections.
It helps.
You know, this material is nice not only for this. I'm sure they probably still make it. It might be called something different now, but you could, if you tie things like if you tie a lot of caddis flies in the summer, this makes a really nice chuck over the caddis. So it's versatile. But I use it for this purpose. Now, much like the other fly, I'm going to just take one of these. This is this one's a little more yellowy colored, but I think they call this a woolly bugger hackle. But I'm going to not use it as something woolly buggerish. I'm just going to use it to give the body a little more substance again. And so I'm just going to tie this right over top like so. And then I'm going to start doing a few new things. So this is what we have right now. We've got kind of this body. In a way, it's kind of like that last or the first fly, in that I've kind of sandwiched a material between two feathers. That has a couple purposes. It'll add a little bit of action to the fly, but it'll also, if you have a material that you don't want to foul, if you jam it between two feathers, a lot of times they'll keep that material from fouling. So it's a good thing to add in places where you want to keep the fly together. You could use a kind of a damsel colored marabou now, or you could use gray olive marabou. Either one would work fine in this regard. And I'm just going to take a little bit. I want it to be pretty even, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stroke it out, and I'm just going to pull it off the hook, off the shaft of the feather. Okay. And you can see the fibers are relatively even when I do that. And I'm just going to tie that in as another wing right here. Okay. So we're progressing along pretty nicely. This isn't really a terribly complicated pattern. But what I'm going to do now, so I'm going to add a couple more colors to it. It's going to seem a little strange because a lot of people don't even know this little minnow looks like this until they actually see one, but they're actually really vividly colorful. And you could either take a teal or a light blue piece of marabou, like so. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to tie just a little bit of that, a little tuft of that in, like so. And then I'm going to take another little tuft of the green stuff, of the damsel color, and I'm going to tie it over top like so. And I'm going to take one more tuft of the blue, and I'm just going to add that on just like that. Okay, so you guys can kind of see we've got this fly that's it's curving down, but it's got some different materials over the top of it. These minnows have kind of a pretty flat bottom, so a lot of the materials are designed to make the fly look a little flatter. Okay, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take 2 of these orange feathers. Okay, these are, like I said, I think these are hen feathers, but we're going to take 2 that are pointed. And the thing about these particular minnows is that they have really bright orange fins. The males do in the spring when they're spawning. They're very colorful. So we're going to give it one little splay this way to give those a little pointer out to one side. And then we're going to do another pointer out to the other side, like so. All right, so now you guys can kind of see what that looks like. All right. And we just got a couple of last steps, and then we'll finish this fly off, okay? I'm going to take a little bit more blue, and I'm just going to tie in just a little bit more. And I'm just going to finish this fly off with a little bit of light olive dubbing at the front. They have kind of a pointy nose, kind of a triangle-shaped nose. So we're going to just do this, like so. And that's going to finish off our little RD, our little rainbow darter. Like so. If you'd like, a lot of times I'll add perch-colored flashabou to this fly. If you want a little more razzle-dazzle to the pattern, that's a really good way to do it. Whoops, I had a little extra material in there. The other thing I sometimes do with this fly, just to make it match the markings of the minnow, is, or if I don't have the right colored marabou, for example, I always carry a lot of Sharpies in my box, or permanent markers, and sometimes I'll just put a little marking on there to give the marabou some modeling. So that's kind of our completed product here, and you guys can kind of see how it looks.
Great looking fly.
I think it looks great. It's more colorful than I expected, I will admit. Is it, and I want to ask you about your project and your book and how you've kind of pursued this understanding of the underwater aquatic world.
Right.
Do you know what you're after when you're starting to look for these, when you go do the snorkel thing? Are you after something specific? Are you doing the wetsuit thing?
Right. Yeah.
I'm curious about that, where that comes from, that curiosity.
The curiosity is something, I guess, that I've always had about nature, just the way my dad was growing up and things like that. But there's a lot of surprises too, because when you're looking at nature above the water, you kind of expect to see a bird here or whatever. But if you're snorkeling and you're not really, it's a whole different world kind of. And you go down there and there's times where you think, wow, I've never seen anything like that. I wouldn't have ever expected that. I mean, the first time I looked underwater, I I don't think anybody realized that our river was full of gobies. I mean, first time I started snorkeling, I'm like, man, there's gobies everywhere, and I never had heard of anybody fishing with them or anything like that. So, so it's just been really cool to kind of have a general idea of the different parts of our waterway where there's different types of minnows that live, and it's just been a very interesting thing. And I don't think I've even really scratched the surface, even though I've spent a lot of hours doing it. So the other thing that's really nice about snorkeling is if you're on a river that has a lot of tubers, for example, and you want something where you're just getting away from people, like other than the fact they might throw a beer can at you or something, you know, on a Saturday, and you wouldn't believe the things you hear even underwater when you're like, what? did I just really hear that? But anyways, so it's just an interesting hobby. It's kind of definitely a niche. The underwater photography part of it takes a fair amount of equipment to do it. So it's something that I accumulated over time, and just kind of a neat side hobby. Everyone needs a hobby.
Yep, that's right. You gotta have somewhere to spend your money.
Right?
Right?
Yeah.
Cameras and fishing are
Right. Those are probably
one too many hobbies.
Yeah.
Stand up.
Yep. How we doing? You guys want me to tie another
We're doing
bait?
great. I just had a few more questions. You know,
Sure.
I figured we'd touch on the book a little bit,
Yep.
hit a few more things like that before we do one more.
Okay.
We're about an hour and 10 minutes with a 20-ish minute audio delay at the beginning. How often for this book, how often did you go out
This
to
book,
shoot stuff?
I took this because it was a lot bigger. You know, steelhead, it's very focused. The water's cold. There's only a certain amount of bait fish that you would do with that, but with covering a lot of different predator fish, and then doing a lot of different things that they eat. I went up from maybe, I don't know, 8 to 10 minnows in the first one to probably 20 or 30 different types. And the second one that some of them I used in the book, some of I didn't. But I mean, there was things like warm water things like golden shiners that live in totally different habitat. Then there's cold water things. You know, a lot of the bait fish, sculpins, things like that are generally more cool water. The book itself isn't just bait fish. I kind of expanded it to some of the other large food sources. So it's got things like crayfish, hellgrammites, some frogs in there, things like that. So
Nice.
yeah. So, but it was a really neat project. It was one of those things like some of the things that I wanted to have photos for in the book, I knew where they were, but I couldn't get good images for them. So a few of them I took samples of, and then I set up a little studio and bought an aquarium, put a black background in the aquarium, and did it that way. And it took a lot of guessing to get I just wanted a few photos, probably 3 of the photos in the entire book. I did it, but I felt like I really wanted those. So anyways, just a lot went into it, and it was a cool project. So
That's awesome. How long did that take to write that?
I started it pretty quickly after the first book was released. So, because I kind of already had the feeling I wanted to do it. So it was probably a 3-year project when all was said and done. Yeah. Yeah.
It goes fast, doesn't it?
It does. And with all the other things in my life, last year when this was really being edited, I didn't have the free time. So it took a little bit longer than I expected before it was finally published. All on me, though.
That's how it goes. No worries. We have a few crowd questions. I think this is actually a great bring it in question because you are known as a spay guy, although you do so much more than that. Right. A lot of what you're tying tonight is spay flies, swung flies. Would you give the quick elevator speech on what the swung fly presentation is and how anglers can achieve that really quick? We had a question from Andy about what a swung fly is.
Sure. So a swung fly is, so if you're out in the river and you look across the river, what you do, what a swung fly is you typically have a fly that will sink below the surface. You can call it a wet fly. If it's a bigger fly, you might call it a spay fly or a streamer, but the idea is that for the most part, if you're fishing for migratory fish, if I were looking at the camera and I was casting towards the camera, I'd be casting a little bit to my left or a little bit downstream. And the line would land in a straight line, and I would just let it come across the current. And we'd let it swing until it was straight below us. And the difference between the swung fly and other presentations, especially for steelhead, is that once you cast it out there, you really don't do anything to the fly. You just let it swing. And I tell people the deader the better. Usually, you don't want to add too much action. And when the fly gets below you, a lot of times that's when the fish will bite the fly. But it's different than streamer fishing for trout, for example, where you're stripping the fly. You're not feeling it in the same, or you're not fishing it completely on the bottom at the same speed as the current, like you would with a nymph. But you're letting it swing. And generally speaking, if you feel something, it's probably a fish if it's not a leaf or a piece of debris or something. So, and usually it's a very strong bite, which is what makes it so appealing to people. It's just a very unforgettable bite. Even in the winter months when you get one to pull on it, it's quite memorable.
Can I ask, you've been swinging flies for a while. What has that taught you, about fishing overall? I mean, is there some takeaway that, for me, there's always something like, it's wild how far fish are willing to track a fly and just be curious. I think fish are curious. Is one thing I learned that's amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm curious what you
particularly our steelhead are very curious fish. I mean, their window is big in the fall. They'll come chase a fly very far in the fall. I mean, they might come from a long ways away to bite your fly. In the winter, it's a little different. They'll still chase, but you have to initially get the fly near their face slow enough that they kind of wake from their slumber, and then they'll get going and chase their fly. So the winter months, though, you don't necessarily have to have your fly on the bottom the whole time. It really does need to get to the bottom. So, yeah.
Awesome. I got a quick question too. Regarding hook sets on the swung fly.
Sure.
From fall to winter, do you change how you do set the hook on a fish, or maybe how long you let it chew on it?
It varies a couple things. It's kind of interesting. The Muskegon, it varies from river to river. Like if you fish a smaller river, generally speaking, on the hook set, you want the fish to turn a little bit. The line is very tight and generally pretty close to you. Over distance, I find in the Muskegon, if somebody just feels the weight of the fish, they don't have to have a loop of line or anything like that. Just wait until you feel the weight of the fish, and then slowly lift into them if you can. Yeah. If you can handle being slow, I've seen people break 18-pound tippet giving it the Jimmy Houston hook set. So, yeah, I mean, in general, when you're fishing for big migratory fish, if you feel a pecking bite, it's not like when you're fishing for trout and you feel that peck and you might want to set the hook. You just never want to do that. You want to wait. The fish might peck at it several times. And a lot of times people will think it's a trout or a small fish. I'm like, there's no trout right here. That's something real. And it's going to eat that fly really hard. And sure enough, it gets all the way around. And that's when it becomes a big fish. So, so basically, if you feel a little bite, don't set the hook. If you feel a lot of big bite, then think about it. Yeah.
Right. Sometimes you don't even have a chance.
You
to
don't.
Set the hook.
Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of times,
it's just like
a lot of times they hook themselves. What I do find though, just kind of talking about the flies that we tied today, if I'm using a small hook like this, I find that it helps to let the fish eat it a little bit more, to give it a little more time and turn. Whereas a lot of times a bigger hook, like this tube fly hook, if he bites it, he's hooked. I mean, it's going to get him. So, so that's just my 2 cents worth on that. So
awesome. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
We have a few more crowd questions.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Todd up in the UP would love to know if you're gonna chase some owls this winter.
Boy, I'm like cursed anytime I head up this way. You guys remember a couple of years ago, basically my truck blew up and I had to have it towed to a dealership. But I started driving up this way, and it was one of those super cold days in January. It was even too cold that I didn't feel like fishing. So I was looking, and there was a lot of owls up in the UP. So I thought, well, I'm going to go, So I hopped in the truck. I got 100 miles up 131, and then two of my warning lights came on at the same time on the dash. And I'm like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. So I look it up, and it says all these like terrible things that could be going wrong with your truck. And I'm like, oh,
so it's WebMD for cars.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Your car's going to die.
That's what it said. So I turned around and I brought it in, and the guy looked at it and he's like, I don't know, and then they put it inside in their warm garage. The lights were all off the next morning and never came back on. So,
oh no.
So anyways, I did see some really cool birds. There was a part of the Muskegon when it was so cold, there was nobody on it. And what happens with our rivers in the winter is that if we have a cold winter like this, the lake starts to freeze, and so the birds move up the river, and so all the ducks moved up the river, and then the predator birds. There was a lot of bald eagles, but there was also a golden eagle that was basically living 5 minutes from my house on the river. So I spent a lot of time photographing him this winter. Definitely
nice.
Really cool, kind of rare bird. And anyways, thank you.
Did you have a name for that last fly?
This one's just a natural rainbow darter. Yep.
Okay. Yep. And I think you had that featured in your first book as well.
It's in this book actually.
Okay.
And it's actually step by step in here. So it'll be
great.
Yeah, so yeah. Yep.
And then we had one last. Oh, geez, look at all these questions. This is awesome. Thank you, everyone, for the great questions for Kevin. This is good. It makes my job a lot easier. Marcus' job super easy. I mean, we just want to ask our questions.
Yeah, I know. I got so many.
I'm just gonna delete. No, I'm just kidding. Let's see. Would you quickly explain how yellow and pink work in a streamer to represent a natural minnow? We had a viewer that fished with you in the early fall, and you caught over 20 bass on a pike, it sounds like.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, whether it's a natural pattern or not, yellow and pink is, for my river, one of the really good. If you want to catch pike, there's no better color combination in the Muskegon than yellow and pink, I don't think. That being said, kind of what I was describing earlier, that when the days are long in the summer and you have a lot of that sunny golden light, a shiner, and a lot of the fish, not just shiners, but even if you have things like shad or chubs or any of these fish that appear kind of silver on their side, they reflect the kind of the warmth of the light. And so, that yellow color as a base is going to be a good base just because of the light. But then you couple that in that almost all of our bait fish are considered to be counter shaded, which means the top of the fish might be trying to disguise them from things above, but the bottom of the fish disguises them from things from below, theoretically. So a lot of times their belly is yellow or white color, whereas the top is different. So yellow is just kind of a natural belly color. I think the pink at the front is probably just something they're triggered by. It's kind of a gill color in a way. So that would be my best guess with the pink, other than the fact that they just like them. So, yeah.
And that was Tim Scott that asked that question.
Okay, that's Tim. Awesome. Hi, Tim.
That's great. Thanks for tuning in, Tim. Cool. Do you want to? Oh my gosh,
they're pouring in.
There's just, man. Do you ever consider switching to small treble hooks for those pecky-ish fish?
Well, that's a very good question. I'll be honest with you, treble hooks, if you want to do it, you'll learn something about how the fish are biting by using trebles. I don't use them anymore. I went through a phase maybe 10 years ago where I used them. They were incredibly effective. I didn't miss many fish, but I had some problems with them. It wasn't that they were hurting the fish. I mean, I was using size 10, so they were very small. The main problem I had was that a lot of times the top and the bottom of the mouth would get pinned shut and the fish just wouldn't fight very well. And it probably wasn't very good for the fish either. So, but if you're fishing for one bite a day, You know, if you're in a really difficult fishing situation, that is definitely a way that you can land the one fish that might peck at your fly. He might just breathe on your hook and then he's caught. But a lot of people ask me, like, when they fish with single hooks, uh, whether the fish is biting the head of the fly or something like that. That's not the case. I know that from using those little treble hooks, because you never have that when you do that. It's just, I think a lot of times they're having the hook turn sideways in their mouth, and that's the problem. So, yep.
All right, Lance, I'm going to ask you a question at the end. I already knew what you were talking about, but let's, do you have time for one more quick
Sure,
fly?
I can
and
tie
then,
one more fly for you guys.
We can chit chat while we do that, and or while you're setting up. Let's see. Lance is interested what you're running for a head today. Everyone's freaking out that SA discontinued the intermediate schedule head.
Right. I'll be honest with you. I kind of, once the Freightliner line was gone, I started looking for other things. And I really, really like the multi-density Rio lines now. I use they have this one called the Pickpocket. That one gets extremely deep, but it's a little more difficult to cast. My go-to line day in and day out is a triple density Game Changer line, floating at the back, and then S2 and S4, I think. And that's bread and butter every day, and I just feel like it always fishes well. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I used to thrive on the intermediate lines. There's some situations I still wouldn't mind them, but there's nothing I don't feel that I can't do with what I'm using right now. So, yeah.
No, that's great. Thank you. That's
Yep.
all we need is,
Yep.
I think Spey is a maze sometimes for consumers.
Right. Grain weights. And
Grains
Yeah.
and rod lengths and ratio equations, and
I do
it
think
just
we
makes
tend
me
to,
wish I'd paid maybe a little bit more attention to math. No.
you know, and things different. You know, this year I've been trying things differently. You know, for trout over the years, for a lot of years, I've been using sinking leaders with floating lines, and I've been using them to fish wet flies and fry, because the Muskegon is gravel bar after gravel bar after gravel bar. So swinging behind the suckers and things like that, you catch a lot of nice trout. And I always use these sinking leaders, which are very thin. And this winter, I mean, one thing that worked really outstanding in the lower water was using that Game Changer line with one of those sinking leaders on the end. Just fished extremely well. What I'd feel is that in the low water, that it would sink down, and I'd actually feel the belly of the line touching, but it would come up slightly with that thinner sinking leader, and so it was still fishing well, basically. So, anyways,
That's great. Awesome.
All right, I'm going to tie one big, kind of simple, kind of along the same lines that we were talking. The person just asked a little bit ago about yellow, and so I thought I'd tie something that's kind of a yellow, not quite pink. My favorite, a lot of times for bass, is yellow and peach. So peach is really a nice color. So I'm going to just tie you one of a fly, kind of an adaptation of a fly that I've been using for really a lot of years. And this is just basically the belly of a chub is what it's supposed to imitate. So I'm just going to show you guys how to do this real quick. So I have a few different materials for this. I'm going to use my trademark Easter basket flash.
I was wondering when that was
Very
going to show up.
We can't have a night without that.
What did you have? What did you have? Like half an hour?
Yeah.
I had 45 minutes in. Gosh darn it.
You know what? There's I shouldn't even tell you guys this, but I have some clients that like have a drinking game whenever I say certain things. They play the video over and over, and whenever I say it, they drink something. So,
oh my gosh.
anyways,
hey, if you're one of those clients, hey, email us. We want to know the rules, okay? We want to be left out here, so we want to hear about this.
It's a true story. So anyways, I've got this thing. I've got a little bit of extra. I'm just going to fold it back, and we're going to use 2 strands of that, okay? Just like that. Usually I cut this stuff at an angle, and it does look a little bit like a minnow's tail when it's cut at that angle. So, I'm going to take some yellow marabou like this. This fly is designed to suspend. It'll sink because of the weight of the hook, but you just give it a strip and then a long pause. Okay, so I'm gonna take yellow, and I've actually, this is one of those flies that I made for smallmouth that I've actually over the years caught a lot of steelhead swinging this fly in the fall too. It's kind of a flesh fly colored thing, and I don't know if that's why the steelhead are eating it, but they do like it. It's certainly not a top tier fly, but it's definitely something that would work in a pinch to catch a steelhead. So, so what I'm going to do, this is a 1/0 Daiichi 2461, so it's a 3X long hook for smallmouth. This is kind of my bread and butter hook, or something similar to it. But whenever I can get it, the 2461 is a really good hook. So now I've got this peach rabbit. It's not cross cut. Okay, this is normal rabbit, and all we're going to do is we're going to tie it in like so. And I'm going to just take that rabbit and we're going to wind it forward almost like it's a feather. You know, we're just going to, and I'm just going to use my fingers to keep the fibers kind of upright, like so. And if you have a rotary vise and you want to get fancy, you can certainly do it that way too. But I'm just going to tie this off like so, okay? And what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut this off at an angle so that it tapers off nicely. But then I'm going to take my fibers here. And any of you guys that are kind of older like me that have been fishing bass a while, there used to be a fly called the Shanks white minnow that kind of was similar to this. It was pure white, and a lot of times you'd use rabbit fibers the way I just did. But this actually gives the fly a really nice action in the water. And all I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a little bit of flash to this fly. You know, I'm a firm believer that fish, you know, it helps to have some flies in your box that the fish can feel as well as see. Some days they'll just react better to things they can feel, and so that this is definitely something they can feel in the water. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a little flash, almost as a parachute, to the fly. This is saltwater gold flashabou. I'm just gonna tie in a long strand and fold it back like so. Okay. And then I'm going to tie in a little bit of silver. This is just silver holographic flashabou. And I'm going to do two of these, so there'll be 4 total when I fold them back. Okay. And our fly is moving along pretty nicely. We could finish it right there and it would catch fish, but usually I add a little bit more material to this. I take a yellow hen hackle and I just lay it over the head to kind of press the fibers down a little bit. And as I finish the fly, I just usually I will give the fly at least a little bit more material, and a good way to do that is to use just a nice marabou feather for the very front, and we're going to just lay it over like so. And I'm going to give it a snip, fold it back, and that's about going to be our fly. And that would be a really good smallmouth fly. And there you have it. All right.
I haven't seen a lot of people do that, how you finished it with, you know, cutting the marabou a little bit longer and then folding it back. That's actually I have not seen that. I've watched a fair amount of YouTube videos, and watch people tie here, and it's kind of cool. Use the whole feathers, is the idea there.
The other thing I'll say about that is, and unrelated to this fly, but if you tie a lot of steelhead flies and you're not very good at wrapping hackle, You can find something long fibered like marabou, put it over the front of a wet fly like a spay fly, and it seems kind of cheesy because it's so easy, but anyways, you can make a spay fly without actually wrapping hackle by doing that, and especially if you add a little flash to it, the fish will respond just fine. So just something to think about. There's a lot of ways to do things that are effective. So
Yeah. What I really like too about that fly is I'm sure it's light to cast because it doesn't have a lot of bulk to it, but it's going to have an awesome profile in there.
Right.
And really can appreciate that.
And you would fish this fly pretty slow. You'd strip, long pause, strip, long pause, and it would just flutter. And you can actually add more flash to the top if you really want it to sink slowly.
Yep.
Because that's like a parachute in the water. So
Would you? I'm curious. So you have a photographic eye. You also have an eye for nature. Would you agree that you tie a lot of flies that appeal to a fish's visual senses? Because
that's true.
I think a lot of your flies are so, and I love it, and I think everyone else identifies with it because you don't overthink and engineer tons of specific movement into your flies, and you really focus on what the fish sees and try and understand flies from that perspective.
It's
Would you agree with that?
It's definitely visual, but I also try to think of things that the fish can still feel. You know, their sense is a lot different than ours. They have that lateral line, and it's super sensitive. They can feel things from a long ways away, and so if you can add something like, for example, this chopped up rabbit strip underneath. Some of my steelhead flies, I have things like emu feathers and stuff like that. If they can feel the fly, I think it always helps to have some flies like that in your box too. Not all of them, but some of them. So
it's just, it's kind of curious because I think it's easy to like identify your fly tying because so many people focus on pushing water in terms of that feel, you know what I mean? And I think you approach that differently and just understand that different materials moving and applying different textures like flashaboos and feathers and things like that all achieve that just as well.
Right. A flash is a really powerful attractant. I mean, if you look at steelhead flies, I mean, you could tie a very uncomplicated steelhead fly and have the right amount of flash or a lot of flash on it, and the fish will still take it, you know.
Sure.
And to some degree, that's true with other fish. Bass are also very, very visual, especially smallmouth. I mean, you can use a lot of material with them too. So, yep.
Yeah, and just the amount of movement too that you get out of flashaboo. You know, not just the flash
Right.
itself, but you know that plastic noodle going through the water. Man, it's makes you want to eat it.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife didn't know what she's getting into, and then she had 2 dogs when we got married, and one day one pooped some flashaboo, so he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, dear."
Yeah, that's I get looks sometimes going to bed after tying flies and there's like flash on me and I'm like,
Right.
yeah, it's a little weird, but it is what it is. Like it could be worse.
Yeah,
It could be.
And I was gonna say, Kevin, I got the same issue with my pet rabbit.
Everyone can't help but visualize that right
Yeah,
now.
right. Shout out to
Yeah,
Raj.
I'm not going to be able to get that one. That one's going to stick in the mind.
We did have a quick question about, and you can answer this really quick about sink tips you're using.
Sure.
I think
I
I know the answer is it depends, but
it does. Yeah.
you know, I'll let you tell them that.
I guess, you know, in normal circumstances, if we have a good amount of water in my home river, the Muskegon, I can use T14 and just be doing that all day. And that'll work every day. I feel like the more I learn about things sinking, though, I find that I'm taking a couple different rods each day, and I'll have a rod that I can fish through a certain area that wouldn't swing well with the T14, and I could be lazy and just avoid that spot, or I could run a fly through it. But a lot of those spots are spots that none of the other types of boats are going to fish, or none of the other anglers. So it helps for me to pack some things that are extra light or extra heavy, just so that I can So basically, I'll carry T14 or a Type 7 sink tip, which is very similar to T14. And I also have pre-made. They're considered trout leaders. They're basically a really thin sink tip that I'll run through areas. Their only downside is that the thinner the sink tip, the harder it is to turn over the big fly. So there's limitations, and that's actually when I was showing you that smaller sculpin earlier. I have to be pretty careful or I can be pretty thin on the sink tip with this one, but if I'm using this fly, I really need a pretty good chunky sink tip, just not only to sink the fly, but just to turn it over in the cast. So yeah.
I've got a question. So we talked briefly about gear. We've talked, we've seen a range of flies. We've seen conditions on a whole change a little bit in Michigan. We've seen lower, clearer water. Last year we got fairly lucky with temperatures, I think.
Mm-hmm.
At least we did.
Yeah.
But we still dealt with low, clear water. How have you adapted your presentations to deal with that? I mean, I'm sure that's part of the equation for you too.
Even the fly line that we were talking about earlier, I look at those colors like, I don't want to pick on any company, but if I have two people in a boat spay casting, which granted, not every area that they build these spay lines for is thinking about that, but if there were two super brightly colored spay lines, the person in the back of the boat is definitely going to get the short end of the stick because the fish is either going to bite or get out of there for the super bright spay line. So that's kind of a consideration. Kind of lost my train of thought there, but yeah.
No worries. We're just talking about, adapting for low, clear water.
Right. The other adaptation that's really profound, using those thinner sink tips, like I mentioned, that's also for low, clear water. But also I use generally lighter fluorocarbon in the low, clear water. Sometimes it costs the fish, but I think a lot of times it brings you the fish too. So, and I'm thinking about fishing from a boat, so I've already got some of my stealth is already gone. I mean, when you're wading, you're pretty stealthy, but from a boat, I've got to think if I have somebody in the boat that can't cast very far, I have to give them some other advantage. And sometimes the lighter line is that advantage or a longer leader. There's a lot of ways to get the fly down to the right level. You can use that sink tip. That's the quickest and easiest way, but you can use a longer leader. You can use a weighted fly and get the fly a little bit further, a little stealthier, a little more natural, and a lot of times that's a low water consideration. So, but other things, if you're fishing on a sunny day, put the sun behind you. You don't want to be fishing directly, the fish to be looking straight upstream into a big ball of fire, so
right.
Things like that.
Do you have any questions, Marco? I feel like I'm asking all my questions. I feel
covering it good.
We're going to start to wrap up. Before I'm going to ask you about your book again.
Sure.
I think everyone's at the cabin fever threshold right now.
Right.
And I think beginning of March is always when it starts to kick in.
Right.
Even though maybe some days are not the best, we're just out there to get some fresh air.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you have any tips for anglers that have that itch, early season and maybe conditions aren't quite the best and they've had some holdover fish available to them?
Right.
Do you have any just general tips for anglers getting out there and, trying to beat that cabin fever and still find some success?
Yep. That's good. Great question. So most of our rivers in Michigan are going to be pretty cold for a while yet, even though the weather might seem nice outside. So look to those kind of slow edges. Remember that as the water just warms up a little bit, there's going to be a lot of food that kind of explodes in those slow edges. It's going to be, you've probably already seen stoneflies in your rivers. Those are big, they don't necessarily need to be what you use, but they're going to draw the trout to the edges in that slow water. Midges will do the same thing. They'll draw the trout to the side. And you can actually fish, the fish in the winter a lot of times aren't real selective, so you can slowly fish a streamer in those edges. But as the fry come around, you'll definitely catch fish in those edges. So you can, and you can work those pretty meticulously. You could run a streamer through them. You can run a nymph and indicator, and be very successful too. So, yep.
I think that's great. And I think people should get out there and, and learn about the river in this part of the season, because it's a different deal and it's still worth doing.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. There's
Because
still
I
fish in
think
the
a
river.
fish on a tough day sometimes is more rewarding than a fish when, one fish when you're catching, 10 a day or hooking 10 a day. So
Right. The ones you work for are always better.
Exactly
The ones that
right.
Come easy.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah, and if you're talking about steelhead, I mean, I always tell people if they catch a steelhead, they've had a good day. So
Exactly.
yeah. So
It's all about managing expectations, right? So
well,
so just to stave off any issues earlier that anyone that missed it about your new book that just came out, we're all
Sure.
very excited. It's already selling out, it sounds like.
yeah, it's been very good.
So we feel lucky to have some available. They'll be available online tomorrow when I have a chance to put them. I could clean all this up first. So, but just give us that elevator speech real quick
Sure.
about the book. We're excited to hear about it.
So after I finished the previous steelhead book, I thought that I'd really like to make a warm water version. I grew up fishing warm water like so many people. Fished, for bass and pike and eventually trout. Probably by the time I was a low teenager, but there's a part of me that's always loved the warm water stuff, and when you're looking at bait fish like I did underwater, the summertime is a really fascinating time because there's just absolutely life everywhere. And so I started kind of cataloging the different types of minnows and bait fish that we have during the summer months. And I thought it was really interesting. So that's kind of where I went with this book. As you'd imagine, the book is very image centric. It's got 330 photos. John Ray contributed a few photos to it. Nick Messenger contributed too. So, but the vast majority are photos that I took just sitting underwater while tubers floated over me. So, they didn't know what it was when they looked at it.
I think that's a
from the
separate
sky.
book, right?
Right. Yeah. But it covers, not only, there's a section on the game fish, there's a big section on the bait fish, as you can imagine. Sections on equipment and reading the water. Kind of like a similar topics to what the first book, except they're greatly expanded because there's a lot more to the summertime, the warm water fisheries, as far as just the diversity of things. And then, unlike the first book, there's step by step with photos of a lot of the flies, and I included a dozen other fly tires in it too. So there's a lot in there, and I think it's a neat product. So I hope you guys will buy it.
Yeah,
You should.
And I just want to say too, your first Matching Bait Fish book has inspired me so much, and I brought that out to Montana with me and showed that to buddies and inspired their fly tying. So I was able to flip through it a little bit before we started tying today, and I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot from that too. Just can't wait to dive into it.
Yeah,
Awesome.
we're all excited. I think it's a fun, it's a fun time of year it's part of that get fired up for the season. So thanks so much, Kevin, for
You're
being
welcome.
here. Remind me your website real quick so people can check it out.
If you want, our guide service is feenstraguideservice.com. And I run this little website with my DVDs and things like that, swingabigfly.com. So.
And they can find you and a lot of your great photography on Instagram as well.
Instagram as well, at Kevin Feenstra. Yep.
Perfect. Other events or places they can find you doing your thing this winter while there's still some left?
There's only a few left. I have this weekend I'll be at the show. I'll be at Nomad Anglers tomorrow in Grand Rapids.
Cool. So anybody in GR, go check that out. Yeah.
And
that's an in-person event?
It's an in-person, very similar type thing, except I think I'll just be
less audio issues.
Signing, but well, no. Honestly, you guys do a great job. It's just
we try.
Sometimes technical things happen. And then I'll be at the Warren show this weekend. I'll be signing books both days, and I'll be doing programs both days. So, and there's probably a couple other things, but that's off the top of my head. So.
That's great. And I'm sure you can find more info if he's got any more stuff going on on Instagram and stuff. So
Yep.
yeah. Did I miss anything, Marco? What do you
No,
got?
I think we covered it.
We made
I
it.
mean, there's always more, but
People are handing us notes that it's getting kind of junky out there. So
Okay.
we want to get Kevin on the road if we
Mhm.
can. And anyone else that's driving tonight, at least around the Traverse area, drive safe. And thanks everyone for tuning in this season. I know it was a very compact season this year, but a fair amount goes into it. And we're very lucky to have people willing to share all this info with all of you, and that's why we started this, and that's what we want it to be. So that's the plan. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Huge thanks to Kevin Feenstra. We'll give
thank you.
the digital clap, or I don't know if there's something
Thank
for
you,
that.
everybody, for watching.
Buy his book, check it out, and anybody that's in Macomb, we'll see you. We'll see you this
down
weekend.
there.
Wham bam.
Be
So,
there, be square.
Thanks guys. We'll see you.
Have a great night.
Yep.
Thank you.